Following is a multimedia presentation that is a supplement to the Sustainable Country Living book. How to Find Good Country Property. This particular presentation is a supplement to Chapter 33 in the book, How to Find Good Country Property. There's a variety of methods that can be utilized to be able to find the property that you're looking for. The first obvious one is a realtor. And every realtor has a website, and they're all using the MLS or multiple listing service listings. So one realtor won't be limited to the properties that they have, but will also include properties that were listed by other realtors. They all do this collectively. So any good realtor website is probably going to be as good as any other one. Here's an example of a website that shows properties in Tennessee. You can see from the listings that you can search by map, you can search by addresses or the MLS number, or you can use filters to find what you're looking for. You'll notice in this example, the first one that comes up is $369,900. It's 3 bedrooms, one full and 1/2 bath, 1,000 square foot cabin in Tennessee. You can go to the filter section and you can limit your search to properties that fit your descriptions. For instance, property details. You could say how big the size of the lot is. Let's say that you don't want a city lot size. You want to have, say, 5 acres or more. So you could choose 5 acres as a minimum, and then your search would be limited to properties that have acreage. So now you see there's a house that is on acreage rather than one that is on a small lot. So here again, this is an example of a real estate company's website. The next option is to use a real estate interactive map. We're going to look for an example with properties in Connecticut. So here is a realtor, and they're loading the images for the map. And you can see from the map that everywhere there are properties for sale, they have the price and the location shown graphically on the map. And this allows you to zoom into a particular area of interest and find what's locally in that region. I find that these interactive maps to be very beneficial when you're looking for property. The next category of being able to look for property is FSBO, for sale by owner. And this is an example of how you can locate properties that are not listed in the MLS with a realtor, but are just being sold by the owner. And there is a website, FSBO, that is specializing in listing these different properties that are not on the MLS. So here you can see, once again, fsbo.com is the for sale by owner website, and all of these properties are not represented by a realtor. Now you can see there's lots and lots of properties, so you can once again use your searches to pick a location, and then you can say how many miles away from this am I willing to look, what is the maximum price, minimum price, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, etc. So you can refine your property searching to an area that is compatible with what you're looking for. Okay, the next category that we're going to consider are specialty websites, such as ones that are listing only properties that are off-grid. There are a number of these. This particular one we're going to use as an example shows a property that is in Arizona, as well as some in South America. So when we get to this site, we can see that there's an interactive map that shows the Americas, and you can see that there are properties clear down in South America, and there are other properties in the United States. In this particular case, we're going to zoom in on Arizona. So another category is public tax parcel sales. And you need to be careful about these, even though it's a great thing to look into and is often ability to find a really good deal on some property. Keep in mind the reason these are for sale by the county or the tax authority for that region is that they're being delinquent on their taxes. So what can happen is they may choose not to pay the taxes because they don't want the property anymore because it has a problem or it's not worth having. An example of this is a friend of mine was looking, he does this a lot, and he does quite well at getting properties that turn out to be a good one, and then he'll fix it up and he'll sell it and flip it. So he's quite knowledgeable about doing these tax sales. But one time he told me about some property that was along the ocean. And the interesting thing about that is the property actually was gone. It was underwater in the ocean because the ocean had eroded that property away. And that sand and soil had gone out into the ocean. So even though this property was a legally deeded piece of property, it didn't exist. And so a person needs to be careful. There have been times where this individual has found a nice, cute little cabin on the edge of some waterway with trees, and he was all excited about that. And what happened is that just before the deadline, even though it's publicly listed, the actual auction hadn't taken place, and the owner of the property has the right to pay the taxes that are owed up to the time of the auction. So when you see properties on a list of a public tax parcel sale, they may be removed from the list before it's all over. I have another friend who found one of these, and it had a really nice lake up remotely up in the woods. It was off grid, had an old abandoned house. Some guy was living in a camping trailer that actually he found out owned it. And he had no intention of not paying his taxes, but he was delinquent on the taxes, so it would show up on this tax list, so people would come and look at it, and then he would try to connect up with them, be able to sell it directly. So obviously what happened is before the deadline, this parcel went away and was removed from the list because he paid the taxes. So that's the caution you need to have when you're looking at public tax parcel sales. But if you are looking for something that is very, very affordable, all you're paying is the back taxes. You're not paying for the property, even though you own the property if you are the one that wins the auction. Typically, these auctions happen on the county courthouse steps physically. And I believe in some cases you can do it remotely, but most of the time you physically have to go and stand there and raise your hand and say, I'm going to buy it. And in order to qualify to bid on it, you have to already have proven the ability to pay what was required and to be there physically. And then once you win the auction, you have a certain window of time, say 24 hours or 48 hours, when you have to pay the money. So let's say it was, $10,000 and you only had $5,000, but you knew that you could, borrow it from a bank, a personal loan or something like that. You would have to be able to, within the time frame of when you won the auction, to come up with the cash. And it has to be like a cashier's check from the bank. So anyway, it's a little bit complicated, but it's an option if you want to get some very, very inexpensive property. So let's look at this example. This is a website for, it's called Bid for Assets. And it's kind of a clearinghouse for these tax sales. And they're in multiple states. In this particular case, we're going to look at the state of Arkansas. And so here we've got some acreage. And here again, be careful because it's not going to necessarily be a big piece of land. It might actually be a property that they built a highway and a sliver of land is on one side of the highway that's useless, but they're still paying taxes. So you can see here, there's a place in Arkansas called Cherokee Village, and there are properties. You can see the current bid. This kind of bidding here on bid for assets is done online. And so they'll have a posted deadline. You can see here that when on the right-hand column, how much time is left till the auction is over. You can see what the current bid is. And if you've qualified yourself to bid, you can bid on the property remotely. And here again, you can see these are very inexpensive because all you're paying for is the taxes. And in this case, probably a little bit of a finder's fee for this website. So there's an example of a tax auction sale. We talked in a previous session about the possibility of if you were going to relocate to rent first. And if you rented first, say for 6 months, you would get to know neighbors, you'd get to talk around people, maybe at church or, at the grocery store or whatever, put up some little notices. You look at for sale ads in the nickel trader, different ways that you could network around if you were in the area, and you might, through word of mouth, find knowledge of a property that isn't officially for sale. It might be, well, my uncle has some property and he's getting up in age and he'd like to sell, but he hasn't listed it. I've got a for sale sign, but I think you might like it. And you could then go and find this when nobody else knows it's even available. And a side note here is if something like that happened and it was somebody that they liked you and they might actually consider holding the contract rather than you having to borrow the money from a bank. If you're going to borrow money to buy property, the banks will loan you money if you qualify for property that has a dwelling on it. But if it's bare land, oftentimes a bank will not loan money on just bare land. So what can happen with bare land is the owner will hold the contract and you may have a 5-year window and have payments and all of that. And then when it's paid off, then you get the deed. If you're going to take advantage of that kind of option, which might work well for you, be sure that the contract and the payment method is done through a title office. And so the title of the property is held by the title office. Costs a fee to do this, but it makes sure you get the land when you're done. And the payments go through the title office. So there's no tracking somebody down and arguing about the price or any of that stuff. Everything's cut and dry, just like if you were working with a bank, except you're working with the landowner who's selling you the property under contract. And so that's a really good way to go if that's an option. So word of mouth, I can't stress enough the importance of talking around and asking people, do you know of anybody? The possibility maybe moving to the area temporarily and renting if you are new to the area. Another method that I really like is, let's say that you've done your due diligence, you've done your research, you've talked to the people in your group, say it's your family, maybe it's 2 families, a mom and a dad and a child, a grown child with a husband or whatever. And the 2 families are going to jointly go into trying to get a property. And they have made, as I suggest, each person makes a wish list of what they're looking for, as exhaustive as possible. And then I recommend each person prioritize what they're looking for with the most important at the top. And then when these, say, 4 individuals have these wish lists, and then you compare them and then merge them together into a collective wish list. And then when you've done that, you then have narrowed down where in the world do you want to be, where in the United States, let's say, you want to be, which county you want to be in, um, what kinds of geographic area are you looking for, and pretty soon you could have narrowed that field way down to maybe one county. And then you look at your list and you say, okay, well, we want to have southern exposure. Well, that probably eliminates half of the things on the list of the possibilities that might be available. And you've exhausted the realtor websites, the interactive maps, the for sale by owner. Don't forget Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. That's another couple of for sale by owner options. You've looked at specialty websites. You looked at the tax sales. Now you've exhausted all of these options, but you have now narrowed your field of interest to, say, one county. And you're looking for particular top of the list items, southern exposure, have some trees, et cetera, whatever your group has come up with. Then what I suggest is to get in your car, have your smartphone that you can get on the internet, and just drive around this area and just look. It's very often that when you look at a property for sale on the internet from any of these methods, whether it's a realtor or for sale by owner or whatever, it may look better than it is because the seller is going to try to put their best foot forward. So by going physically there and looking, you can eliminate 80% of the ones you thought were of interest because when you get there, you're disappointed. You might find that, next door is a big noisy gravel pit, or maybe it's a dangerous corner in the highway where it'd be hard to get off the road, or maybe that whatever. All these things become more obvious when you get there and look in person. I have a friend who had a beautiful, beautiful log home on acreage. It was on the end of the road. Very nice. He'd installed solar. He heated with wood. It was really great. The problem with this property, it was a dead end, and the previous property that you went through to get to his property was very junky. There was junk on both sides of the road, of the driveway. So even though he had a little piece of heaven, he had to go through this horrible property to get to this other property. Fortunately, he was able to sell when he had to leave and relocate. But these are kinds of things you need to think of ahead of time. One time, my wife and I were looking for property, and we found, this process. We found a property that we thought would be really good. And on our way to it, we're like half a mile from it. There was this big greenhouse operation, and my wife was really interested in that. So we stopped and chatted with the greenhouse operator. Oh, what are you doing here? Well, we're looking at property up the road. He says, you don't want to live here. There's a guy that lives up here that is really violent. He's threatened neighbors. He has guns. The sheriff's out here all the time. You don't want to live here. Now, how would you know that if you hadn't talked to people and gone and looked physically and word of mouth? So it's really important towards the end of this sequence of trying to find property that you actually go and look. Possibly, if you can get away with it, walk the property. You can go and look at Google Earth, for instance, or Google Maps, and go to the satellite image version of it and find that property that you're looking at. You could do this on your smartphone in your car while you're sitting in front of this property, as long as you have cell service and internet capabilities. You can tell what is not visible to you. Really important. Okay, so moving on, don't be limited to properties that have for sale signs. Simply drive around and look, and not just look at ones that you've identified with these realtor websites, for sale by owner, et cetera, but now you've exhausted all of those, and now you're pretty frustrated because you're not finding what you're looking for. But by driving around, look at properties from the lens that says, do I like this property? If it was for sale, would it be of interest to me? Because you don't know if it's going to be available. So let's say you find this property that you see by just stumbling onto it. You've been doing all these other steps, and you get to the point where you're not finding anything, and you you go and you look and you say, well, man, what, I wish this one was for sale. I like this. Well, then you go to the county website, and we'll show that in a second here, and you look at who owns the property. Because what you don't want to do is walk up to the door and knock on the door and say, hey, do you want to sell this property? Because the property might not be owned by the person that answers the door. If the person that owns the property lives in a different location and he rents it, if you were the renter and somebody came and said, do you want to get kicked out because I want to buy the property? You're not going to want to say yes, because you want to, you like living there. So by using these tools, you can isolate down the different methods to look for property. And then when you find one of interest, even if it's not for sale, you can still use the tools online sitting right at the front of the driveway. You can do that from your smartphone if you have cell service and internet connection. You can look at who owns the property, what's it worth. You can see a map of how big it is. You can look at the Google Maps and go to the satellite view and see what's around the neighbors. You can see if it's backed up against wilderness. You can see if there's water, all these kinds of things that you would be looking for that you couldn't see from the front of the driveway. So these are the different methods that I have found to be useful. I'll tell you one quick story. My wife and I were looking for property, and we had actually said we were never going to move again, and because we'd built the house and it was pretty stressful. And then one day, and she made me promise we would never bring up the subject of moving again. Okay, fine. Well, then our kids grew. They were in a Christian school that went to 8th grade. And so one day I said, Kathy, I wonder if we should move. And she said, no, don't talk to me about this. You promised. And I said, no, just listen to me. I said, our kids are going to get done with 8th grade. What are we going to do in 9th grade? Are we going to put them in public school? We were both working in the public school system. Well, no, we're not going to do that. Do you want to homeschool? Well, we did that already. I don't want to do that for 9th grade. They need social. I said, well, we don't live in a place where they at 9th grade could go away to a boarding academy and not have the trauma of being a freshman away from home. I said, and we're not in a location where it's practical to commute to a 10th grade Christian school. But if we moved to the other side of our county, we could still attend the same church. They could still have the same friends, but now we're within a carpool distance to go to 3 different Christian schools that go to 10th grade. So, okay, let's look for property. In the meantime, we put our place up for sale, and it had a buyer. So now we had to get out in a month, and my wife does not like not knowing where she's going. This was extremely stressful. So we did all the things I've talked to you about here, different ways to find properties, and we had gotten to the very last. We had done everything on this list, and now we're down to not limited to a for sale sign. We had been given a listing of some property and from a realtor, and they were too lazy to take us there. So this was on a Sunday afternoon. Kids at this point said, we don't want to go with you anymore. We're tired of doing this. So it's just the 2 of us. We went driving, and we couldn't find the property that was on this listing, on this map that they'd given us. So we're very discouraged. Why, Lord, are you doing this to us? This is frustrating. So we said, let's go home. So we went home, and we passed this place that had a gated farming community. And I said, why the gate's open? Why don't we go in there? She said, we can't go in there. It's gated. I said, but the gate's open. And she says, well, what are you going to do if somebody comes up to you and says, what are you doing? I said, well, we can tell them we're looking for property. She says, okay, but you do the talking. And so we drove in. We went to almost the very end of it. And sure enough, this guy comes walking out to our vehicle. And I said to her, in spite of my promise, I said, you do the talking. I think it'll go better if you do the talking. So this guy proved to be the second grumpiest guy in the neighborhood. We didn't know that. He came out because Kathy was talking to her Talking to him, he softened and saw we weren't a threat. And he said, well, I think there's some property down by the entrance, by that gated entrance that might be for sale. There's no sign. Okay. So we drove back down, thanked him for his kindness. We found a 4x8 plywood sign that showed a map of this development that had been done years and years ago. It was like 5+ acre hobby farm type thing. And we're looking at this map, weather-beaten old plywood sign, and the grumpiest guy in the neighborhood came out. He owned the sign. We didn't know he was the grumpiest guy in the neighborhood. He came up to us and asked us what we're doing. We said, well, this guy up the road said that there might be some property for sale, and we're trying to figure out where it is. And he lighted up and he said, I'm the one that knows about that property. Let me show it to you. So here, this grumpy guy is now a nice guy. And he spent the next, I don't know, 20 minutes showing us this bare land property. And he explained that what had happened is he owned the house where the sign was, and they had a riding arena. And his daughter was into horses, and her best friend was into horses, but her family lived in town on a city lot. So they would come out and ride horses together in their arena on the country property. And he said what happened is the family decided to buy the parcel in question so that they could live near the riding arena and the two best friends could be near each other. So this guy bought this property, but the problem was it couldn't be built on because of the zoning. And but he was a county appraiser. That's the person who figures out, how to do land deals and what the price is and all that, figuring out the values. So he had spent 2 years working through the county system to get the zoning changed on that property so that it could be built on. In the meantime, the two daughters aren't best friends anymore, and the parents of the other daughter decided, why don't we not move and build a house here? Why don't we sell it? So what happened is that day, that Sunday, we had a handshake agreement that we were going to buy that property. And Monday, the next day, we bought it. The miracle of this is how we found it. And Monday, get this, was the first time in history when that property could legally be built on. God knew the whole time. He knew. And we went through all this pain and agony, and we found this property that didn't have a for sale sign, and one that God knew was perfect for us. And we bought the property and we built a house, and we just loved living there. So there's an example of, number one, how God can work things out for you. And secondly, don't be limited just to places that don't have a for sale sign. The last one I want to suggest is my website, preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. I have an option if people want to sign up for this feature. I have a thing called End Time Update. And for the 270 people that are on the list, they are receiving approximately once a month an email blast. It's done anonymously. Their email address doesn't show. And it's sent out from me when I find some newsworthy thing that's going on that I think may have prophetic significance. If I'm informed of some country property for sale that I think people need to know about, I will send it to this email list, and they will then know about country property that I've been told about, and then they have the option to follow up on that if they would like. So if that's something that you are not already on and would like to, send an email to info@preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com and ask to be put on the email list, and I will be happy to do that, the End Time Update list. In the meantime, I'm going to show you a video of one such property. This property has since sold, but I did send out an email blast telling people on the list about this, and actually had the opportunity to visit the property and make a video tour, which we're going to watch right now. This is a video tour of some country property owned by Lloyd and Mary Margaret Amy, who she is in a facility, retired, and he's passed away. The Lloyd and Mary Margaret were instructors at Pacific Union College during their career, and this was their retirement home, which they developed from bare land. We are at the end of a 2-mile long county road. At the time they moved here and bought the property, it wasn't paved, but you can see the end of the paved road in this view. We will now proceed to their drive. This is the entry to the property off the county road. You will see it's a nice wooded 10 acres with ferns on either side of the driveway, making it very nice. The adjoining wooded area on either side is a tall stand of cedar trees. It's very beautiful. This is the home. It's a 2,000 square foot, 2-story home. Real quality built home, built in 1989. The 2.5 car garage is a 1,300 square foot. Plus there's a little wood shop in the back, a 3/4 bathroom, and a wood shed inside and outside in the garage area. We will proceed to tour the outside of the property and then go inside. It's nicely landscaped. All of what you see here are rhododendrons and azaleas, which are beautiful colored plants during the year. They're evergreen. The rest of the year, you can see in the distance, there's a beautiful, apparently a cherry tree that's in bloom. There's a fenced orchard with about a dozen fruit trees. The framed area is blueberries. There are, as I recall, also seedless blackberries, and we will show you grapes in a minute. But here's the rest of the front area of the property. When Lloyd and Mary Margaret first bought this property, they had to whack their way in through the thick woods to get here. And then over the years, as they'd come up in the summers from working at PUC, they would clear this land and live in a tent. And then they would go on hiking expeditions and such, backpacking. Over the years, they built this cabin. The lumber was built from trees knocked down here on the property, and Lloyd cut up the lumber with a Alaska chainsaw sawmill. They lived in this 2-room cabin when they would come up for the summers. It had a wood stove in the main room and a kitchen, and then they had a bedroom with a bathroom. And the bathroom even had a, because it was off-grid and no running water, they would haul water from a spring quite a distance away in a pail. And then they had a shower with a 5-gallon bucket with a rope and a pulley with holes in the bottom. They'd fill the warm water in the bucket and then lift the bucket and have a shower. The property has a nice orchard of about a dozen fruit trees of varieties and some grapes, and I understand seedless blackberries as well. These appear to be grapes. I recall they were Concord grapes, I believe, on this fence. In one corner of the orchard is a blueberry patch.
with about a half a dozen blueberry bushes matured. They're very productive. There's a frame around it with which allows for netting when the berries are ripe to keep the birds from taking them. Sauk Mountain is in the distance. And here's the rhododendrons and azaleas on the front back side of the house. And this is the south side of the house. You can see it's a two-story house. Living room space is on the lower right, master bedroom on the lower left, and then great room space upstairs. There's an attached sunroom on either side of that door, in which Lloyd was starting seeds and raising orchids. And then the window on the left is a little wood shop in the back of the garage. You can see there's skylights above that sunroom. This little fenced area is what was their garden in their elderly years, but I understood from Lloyd that there had been a much larger garden over here in previous years. There's a little greenhouse. This greenhouse is one that was manufactured in British Columbia. The greenhouse is predominantly grapes. They're a seedless green grape variety that's really good and very productive. Also on the back of this equipment shed are the same grapes which have been pruned for the season, and they'll grow quickly. And these grapes, if the summer is long and hot, will be ripe, and if not, the ones in the greenhouse for sure are able to be ripe and easy to eat. The other remaining outbuilding is a equipment shed. This is the north front part of the house. Can't see it in the video very well, but in the far distance is the national park, North Cascade National Park. That's Snow King Mountain with the snow on it. So this is the north side of the house. Breakfast area is on the left, kitchen's in the middle, and utility room on the right. The 2.5 car garage. It's very spacious and has a lean-to shed for firewood outside, as well as a firewood room on the inside. So this is the front of the house, which faces east. Nicely landscaped. Ornamental bushes and trees. The living room is on the left, entry and breakfast nook on the right, and upstairs, great room space. If you look carefully, you can see the creativity of the design of the siding up on top with the sunburst. There's a front deck and a little front porch. The front room has lots of big windows, looking out at the landscaping and the mountains in the distance. These windows face south to the orchard. Dining room. Has a wood stove, a Blaze King wood stove, I believe it is. They predominantly have heated over the years with wood, but it has electric cadet heaters as well. There's a cute little breakfast nook area besides the dining room. And this is the kitchen. Lloyd was quite a wood craftsman. He built all the cabinets. A very nice kitchen. Here's the other view of the kitchen from the other direction. And from there It goes into the bottom of the stairway and the master bedroom and the bathroom. Off the kitchen is a utility room with a mud sink, washer and dryer. And then through the door further is a sunroom. This is a place where Lloyd would raise orchids and do starts for gardening. Has two big windows and sunlight coming up from the ceiling. The garage is a sheetrocked 2.5 car garage space, quite roomy. Off the garage is a 3/4 bathroom that can be used in conjunction with working outside or in the sunroom or in the garage, but could also be used if the wood shop was turned into an apartment. The house has central vacuum system, as you can see, has a newly replaced hot water tank that is electric. And you'll see on the wall here, there's hookups for the generator when the power goes out. This Honda generator is the one that they use to hook into the panel. You can see that they had stored firewood in here. And this over here is the firewood room in the garage. And then, of course, outside the wall is also wood storage outside under the shed. Through this door is what was Lloyd's wood shop. And got lots of big windows. Like I say, this could be turned into a little apartment. Lloyd Amy literally wrote the book on country living. And when they purchased this property, they were attempting to implement all of the principles that he had written about and taught about country living on this property. While Lloyd attempted to integrate as many sustainable elements to this property as he could, it isn't off-grid. You can see the power transformer for the underground power. That's the only aspect, in my opinion, on this property that could be enhanced, that's missing regarding being sustainably independent, is the aspect of having alternative energy, which could be added. But it already has a dozen fruit trees, it has blueberries, grapes, other kinds of berries. It's got a source of firewood in the woods on the property. It has a wood stove for heat. So from a sustainable country living perspective, in my opinion, this is an ideal place. If you took bare land and were going to develop your own country property, how long would it take to grow fruit trees to be productive? How long would it take to have garden space that would be productive and build a greenhouse and so forth? And this has everything except for the addition of some alternative energy which could be added.
I'm going to use the property that we just watched a video of to show you how to use the interactive real estate listing maps to find out information from a realtor's perspective about the property. So this particular place that you just saw the video for, you can see it in the left corner of the screen, and on the right you'll see a map with the red dot being where that parcel is. Then when you click on the option, it will give you the details of that specific place, the price, and all of the details, who the realtor is. In this particular case, it's a Christian realtor. It shows, you can see a wood stove, and it's got fruit trees and things like that. Then when you dig a little deeper on the realtor website, it tells you lots of information that can be useful, and the size of the land and how many stories and how many bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can even find more information by going deeper into the real estate listing website. But when you've exhausted all of these real estate pieces of information, you don't have to stop there. You can now go to the county assessor's office website. You can type in the name or address or parcel number of this particular parcel that you're looking at, in this case, the one we showed the video of, and it will give you detailed information that the county has, which the realtor office may very well not have. So we put in the name, and it popped up with the parcel number and the name of the owners. And then when you click on it, it shows a picture, and then it gives the verbiage at the bottom is the legal description, which is what a property surveyor would understand. It's pretty complicated, but it tells you the exact corners and how many degrees this way and that and all that kind of stuff. It shows who owns it and who lives there. And remember, I talked about if you look at a property, you don't want to just knock at the door because they might not be the ones that are living there. In this case, you can tell that it's the same people. And then when you click further, you can see a lot of details, the history of it, of its purchase, its assessed value. Keep in mind, assessed value is what the county assessor believes the property is worth. And that's usually maybe about 80% less than the actual market value because the assessor is an elected official and doesn't want to lose in an election. So they try not to get everybody mad at them. So the assessed value is often a little bit lower than the actual selling price. So you will notice that's the case here. When you add it all up, it's you use it as a benchmark and just don't say, well, because the assessor says it's this much, that's how much it is. It may be worth more than that. Then you can go to Google Earth or Google Maps and look at the same property. And here you see it, and you see the highway that's nearby, the road it's on. The blue dot in the middle is where the house is. But it's a pretty flat drawing. It doesn't show you terrain. So if you click on the option to look at as a topographical version of the map, you can now see where the blue dot is in comparison to flat land and steep hills and so forth. And that's really helpful because if the whole thing's really steep, it might not be very useful. And then you can use the satellite image option, which is really helpful because now you can spy on the neighbors. You can see if that industrial plant is next door. You can see if there's trees. And if you go back to where the parcel maps are, you can tell who owns the properties around it, like whether there's a large parcel of timberland owned by a timber company or the Forest Service, that kind of thing. So here's an example of word of mouth. This is a Seventh Adventist family who let me know about their property, their country property for sale, just like the other one. And this one is currently for sale, and it is listed by a realtor. So we're going to go to that. So this property is in the country, and again, it's owned by a Christian family. And you can see there's 48 pictures. From a sustainable perspective, it's important to understand that there are some features of this property that are really beneficial. For instance, there is a fairly good-sized yard property with garden space and so forth. It's backed up against farmland, which, remember, we talked about being backed up against, wilderness. So even though this is on a paved highway, which could have an advantage from snow plowing to, that kind of thing, but it's also not got neighbors behind and to the left and right. You would need to check out what's across the road because this picture is not showing what's across the road. But anyway, it's got enough property to have a garden and that kind of thing. It also has a nice solarium greenhouse type attachment on the front of the house where you could grow things inside. It's got a wood stove upstairs. Downstairs, it has another wood stove. So you can heat with wood. I'm looking at things that are important to being sustainable. You can add solar to any property. That's an easy thing to add. You just need to pay for it. But it'd be more difficult to have a house that didn't have a wood stove and a chimney, and then you decide to add it. That could get complicated. So this place has a pantry, really nice pantry. Looks like it has a sauna. You can look at the listing and see the different features of this country property. So if a person was moving out of the big city and moving to this property, they would feel like they were moving into wilderness. If you're a person who's already lived in the country for many years, you might say, well, I want to be further out. I want to have, 40 acres or 10 acres. But this, for the right person, this is a pretty neat option. And the point is, this is one that people on my End Time Update list have been informed about. So that's an example of word of mouth finding the listing. Now I'm going to close with a story that's just absolutely amazing. This is a story of a Russian couple who came to America with just their suitcases. They lived in the city, and she cleaned houses for a living. And they got convicted that they needed to move into the country. They had no idea how they could do that. They just prayed and that God would lead them to be able to somehow get some country property.
Hello friends, my name is Svetlana and I'm here at the camp meeting in Washington, presenting the school that we have in Montana, Thompson Falls. It's a simple living and survival school where we teach people country living and all the secrets of the past that people used to survive. Then they didn't have any modern technology or any comforts of the life that we have right now. So we're trying to revive those secrets and learn them ourselves and teach them to the people. So this is how it all started. We came here to Washington camp meeting. It was about maybe a few years before. That was before COVID, and it was a wonderful seminar we had preparing for the time of trouble. I was so eager to go there. I actually didn't miss a single time, and I asked so many questions from the teacher. I actually bugged him before and after the class and during his lunches because I was so interested in this. And then my husband came from the trip. He came to the class too. And then we start talking about that we need to move. We need to move out of the city because it's getting more and more dense with corruption and all the world views and crime. And just all evils are actually enforced by the government sometimes. So we just started to think how we can move and follow God's call. We also bought a book called You Can Survive. It's a nice big book which was sold in Adventist bookstore. And there was interesting advice that you don't just move, you need to plan for it. You need to have some plan that you know how you're going to live, where you're going to live, how you're going to make a living. Because sometimes people move too fast and then it's a mistake, then they're not prepared and then they lost all the money, they can't go back. So we didn't want that happen to us. So we started to pray so that God can provide. And it was especially difficult because people who live here in America, maybe they have their ancestors came 200 years or maybe in a few generations. I'm a first generation immigrant here, so we came with literally 2 bags and we didn't have any money saved, any resources. We just had apartment which we had mortgage on it. That's all that we had. And I was thinking, okay, Lord, how are we gonna do this? Because it might be easier for other people who have something, but we literally have nothing but children and just work here. It's just impossible, especially the book says that it's going to be hard times and it's good not to have mortgage or any loan or any money you owe, because in a vision, Ellen might even said she saw some people were in a slaves, like because they had like in a slave condition because they had to pay things. So we didn't want any of that. So we didn't want to make any big loans and to move and have even more financial challenges. So we prayed about this. Said, God, you need to provide this. You need to provide this somehow. And so one day I had a call from the lawyer, and it says that one of my customers, I had a cleaning business. I still have a cleaning business, and we try to be not only doing business for money. I always try to include my ministry into the business. So we always care for people, we pray for people. Sometimes I just go clean the house and person actually walks behind me and talk all her problems and all like challenges of her life while I'm working. And usually take 2-3 rooms and then they kind of empty themselves and on. So we usually like care for people more than we just do for money. So she left me a house in Bellevue in her will, and then she died in a hospital. Lawyer told me that she left everything on my name, the house, the car, all the furniture, jewelry, anything in the house, just the whole thing. Just I was so shocked. Literally, I was like 3 days. I was in such a shock. Like I laid in bed, I couldn't even move. Like, wow. Because it was more than I could imagine. So not to pay mortgage on our apartment, we sold the apartment and paid the mortgage back, and we moved to the house, and we lived in a house for a couple years, and we started thinking, okay, what do we do next? So if we sell the house, can we find something with acreage? Because there were certain standards that you need to look for, then you buy property. Because right now, when we live in Montana, we see people moving in and they want to live in a country. The people moving to the country, they have no clue what they're doing. So they think they're doing good thing. They sold house and everything and they move and they bought just 1 acre with homeowners on it, that they can't do anything. They can't even raise a chicken on it. So why did you move to the country? So people have no idea what they're doing. So according to that class that we were at, it had a property that should have, acreage, so you can grow your food, you can grow animals if you need, you can have your own wood, you can have your own water, and potentially some source of income. All that, it's not very easy to find that kind of property for the money, even you sell the house. So that was another challenge. So we decided to pray, and there was a COVID. We went to the river with my husband and kids on Saturday, and we had a fire there and talked, and we just sat and it was oh so nice and quiet, mountains around. I said, let's pray that God provides us something like this. So then we prayed, and then we came home. We made a little plan on a picture. We draw like, oh, this is what we really want to have. So we want to have like a property by the national forest, or have to be river here, or there's a creek, and across the creek will be mothers-in-law apartment. It will be some cabins, because like how you make a living, you have like something to rent out, or you need to make some living. So should be some cabins, and there'll be house, and should be a pond, and the big tree. So we just made a little picture, and I put it in my Bible, and I forgot about it. And then said, okay, since we're praying, let's just go and look. So we started to making trips. We went through entire Idaho from one end to another, and we made it was a few days trip, and then another trip, looking for a place. And we were looking for a place that will also be a good climate-wise, that you can grow something there, not just go away and hide from the world. And also we're looking for a place where the kids can also have a good church and some school or something, because you need to think about so many things when you move out, about so many people that you have. And some places in Idaho we found that were really good, like climate-wise, but they were so remote, or so a little bit scary looking with all the trash around, and community was a little scary. So we didn't find anything. And on the way back from South Idaho, my husband says, let's go and take a scenic route just through the mountains. So, okay, I was up to an adventure. So we went through through the mountains, and there's no signal there, and we took a wrong turn and we got lost. So instead of coming to Bonner's Ferry, somehow we got through Lola Pass, through Missoula and on 200s, and then we never considered even Montana. But when we were driving through on 200s, I saw this place. I was Adventist church right on the road, and the place was so clean, and the house is clean, and you know, the nice white fences, and all the fields are so nice cut, and all animals clean. And I was like, wow, this looks like so amazing. This is just so perfect place. I just really love the place. So it's like, when I told my husband, this is the place, just what's the name of this place? It's just, you know, and a big river going through, like huge nice river, and views just amazing. And we just found on the map what place is. So then we came home, I started Googling, like, what is it? And it was a Cabinet Mountain Range District. And it was so expensive. Like, wow, it's good, not for, for nothing, because it's just like, it was just so expensive. Just to buy a house on 20 acres, it was over $1 million just for that. Like, wow, that's like not in our price range. And then I was looking, I found that the resort, and it's actually popped up before, but it was so expensive. It was $2.5 million. It has 14 cabins, had house, had lodge, everything. It used to be like a school for different difficult children, some like fancy, expensive school where like rich people send their kids who don't behave well. And then that school was divided and sold separately, and the guy bought it and made a resort out of it. So we didn't want to do these big loans or anything, so we just, you know, keep skipping it. But in November, somehow it just looked at me, and I actually read what it says. Because of the price, I didn't even read anything. So, and it says for sale or trade. And so that was a joke too. I said, I have a house in Bellevue, do you want to trade? Because he said for sale or trade. And I really believe that they were already laughing at me there, just really laughed me out. But the next day, the agent called, and they actually said that they're interested. I was like, really? And he said, yes, he's interested. So we did a trade. So we trade our little house, which came after this old lady and was very old. We didn't remodel it because we didn't have money to remodel it. It will take like almost $800,000 just to remodel it because it was so bad. So he took that old house for this entire resort, and it's 47 acres, and it has 14 cabins, and they're beautiful. We have a nice lodge, and we have huge bonfire place. It's by the National Forest next to Clark Fork River. It has house there with the pond as we wanted, and big tree next to it. And it even came with a little car, like a UTV, that we can drive on the property. And it has an apartment for mother-in-law, and a big shop, and a garages. So everything that we needed, God provided. And we didn't even pay a penny for paperwork. He made all the paperwork. He paid to the agents, he paid all the taxes. He did all the paperwork. All we did, we moved our stuff from one house to another. That's it. So all the paperwork was ready in January. And I was wondering how we're gonna move, because in Washington it's fine, it's just rain here, but there it snows, like it's gonna be such a deep snow. We will have to go through one pass or another pass. How are we gonna bring all the trucks and on the ice? I was really worried. But it didn't snow until didn't snow until January 2024 or something like that. So then we moved. We had 3 trips, and we moved all the furniture, all our stuff. It was unloaded, and truck was returned. It started snow next day. January, like, I don't think Montana didn't have snow until mid of January. Even on the New Year, when at Christmas, it was free of snow. It's just something totally unusual. So this is how we got the place. So at the end, I just want to say thank you, God, for providing. And I want to say that everyone who's seeking and looking and praying under God's care. So God can provide a place for you if you're really looking. and he will provide place exactly what you need, because he gave me exactly what I wanted on my plan. We were just shocked. I found in the Bible the paper, it's like was the same plan we drew before. So well, God was amazing. So I want you to say, like, dream big, have a big plan, so you can not only do life for yourself, also think about others. That's what I was thinking, like, what if something happens, so we can help others, our relatives, our church members. So I wanted a bigger place so people can come and stay if they need. We can, support church. And always when you plan, don't just think about yourself, because God wants us to think about others as well. So then we were planning this, I was thinking about other people too, like if something happened, so this place will be perfect. We can have like almost 100 people staying here and helping them and helping each other and being community. So, and then God provides when you pray and then you give it to God's hand. Even if you don't have it yet, you don't have resources, you need to start looking, because maybe God have something free for you. Start, praying like what God wants you to be, where He wants. Start looking for the place. You never know, because God wants us to take a step, not just sit and do nothing and think what you already have, what already you can do. So if you're planning to move, start reading books about this. Start coming to our classes and learn how to live in a country. So do whatever you can already, what's in your power that you already can. And then God will give you next step and next step and next step. And then you move out in a country. That's an excellent opportunity for ministry. You always can find a way how to do it in your own way, because God has planned for you.
So we need to pray for guidance when we're looking for property. That's the most important thing. We need to do our part. And then when God opens the doors, we need to be ready to move forward. During these times, God offers us peace and assurance and the opportunity to prepare for troubled times soon to come. To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.